Hi. I thought I would just try and read a story out of my big book of Bible stories. Once upon a time, 4 old men got together to talk about their glory days of youth. Their names were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew said, "I was thinking we ought to get our heads together and write down everything we remember about Jesus. We aren't getting any younger after all." John said, "What's the point? He'll be back before long." Luke said, "It's not a bad idea." Mark, "I agree. Idle hands, you know." Matthew, "Like when he was at the temple and really lit into those money changers." Mark, "Ha ha ha, that was great." Luke, "This was right before the end, right?" Matthew, "Yes, that's why the Pharisees had to kill him. Making trouble in the financial area is the unforgivable sin." John, "That's not the way I remember it. Jesus went to the temple first thing to set things right. The priest turned against him later, when he raised Lazarus." Mark, "I don't remember any Lazarus." John, "He lived in Bethany. Lazarus was a good friend. Mary and Martha's brother." Luke, "This is the first I've heard of it." John, "I forget where we were when we heard the news, but by the time we got to Bethany he was dead, and Jesus raised him from the grave." Matthew, "Doesn't ring a bell. Lazarus, you say?" John, "Yes, Lazarus. They had to move the stone because he was dead for days. Everyone was crying. He was all wrapped up and stuff. That was the last straw. That's why the Sanhedrin had to do something about Jesus." Mark, "I don't remember that at all. Maybe we should just leave that out." Matthew, "Well, let's put that aside for now. No sense in our getting into an argument, first thing. But Bethany, that brings back memories." Mark, "That's where that fig tree was, remember?" Matthew, "Remember? How could I forget? He sure put a powerful curse on that thing." John, "I don't remember any fig tree being cursed." Mark, "Well, it happened. This was right before we went up to Jerusalem and Jesus threw the money changers out." Matthew, "You mean after. It was after we left the city." Mark, "We noticed it after, but he cursed it on the way into town." Matthew, "What do you mean noticed it later? We were on our way from Bethany to Jerusalem the morning after the temple, and he noticed the fig tree on the roadside. There weren't any figs, so he cursed it, and it withered on the spot. We watched it as it happened." Mark, No. We got into Jerusalem late, and we didn't even go to the temple that first day. We had a look around, then went out to Bethany for the night. The following day Jesus saw the fig tree didn't have any fruit and cursed it, which was odd because it wasn't even the season for figs. Well, we continued on our way to the city. Jesus threw the merchants out of the temple, and it wasn't until the next morning Peter pointed out that the tree was withered. Matthew, "That's not the way it happened." Luke, "Whose fig tree was this anyway?" Mark, "I don't know, but I bet he was angry when he saw his tree was dead." John, "I don't remember any of this." Matthew, "That's because Mark's getting it all wrong." John, "Maybe, since we can't agree, we should leave that story out." Luke, "That might be the wise thing to do. This is history we're writing, after all." Matthew, "No, we can't just leave it out. It was an important sign, a symbol of what is to come." Mark, "Well, you should try to get it right then. Peter noticed the withered fig tree after Jesus cleansed the temple." Matthew, "You're wrong. We watched it as it withered." And so on into the night. In the end, each decided to write his own version of Jesus' story, because they could not agree on what really happened, or when it happened, or what it meant. The end.